start by questioning. So I have a question regarding, so we are in a digital era. So we can build nice spaces, modern spaces for attracting employees, and making employees to work together again. But because we are in a digital era, there are more and more employees that are working remote from home. So one question is if it's worth to invest in redesign offices or making investments in new offices, modern offices, as long as less and less people are going to the office every day. But an additional question, I can also help in answering myself and maybe you, ladies. Is this way of transformation that you are doing a midway between the old traditional way of working in the offices and the modern way of accommodating with the new generations and characteristics and attracting and adapting leadership and management to the new era? Thank you.
So who would like to answer? Karin or maybe Linka?
Okay. Hi. So your first question was about whether you still need physical space going forward, given the fact that you can work remotely. So we truly believe you do, because the key to success is having a shared purpose. So until now, you can really see that the more employees start to work remotely, the more disconnected they become not only to one another, but also to the organization as such. Of course, you could argue that this would change in the future, but our experience so far and our research so far has shown that by bringing them together, different KPIs increase, and it all starts with the human interaction. And please help me with your second question again.
So the second, it was also in terms of the midway between the old way of working and the new modern way of getting people together, maybe not every day, but from time to time, I don't know, once, twice per week, to work together and to share from their experience and create beliefs and drivers to go further together in team.
So I always struggle a bit with the notion of old and new way of working, because that somehow means that there's something wrong with the old way of working. I think it's more about the output that we are producing now. So we used to be much more process focused, also coming from manufacturing. Now most of us are knowledge workers. And even so, I mean, you could say in Romania that's not the case, because it's so much shared service centers and BPOs that are process oriented. We even have our own shared service center in Cluj, but it really is knowledge workers, which means that if the output is different, so in a process work environment, you know, each person has their little piece of the pie. They don't necessarily need to talk to one another. I made this here, sell it there, make sure if it's broken, you deliver a new one, etc. But in this day and age, it's messy, right? It's iterative. It's not linear at all. And for that, you need a different way of working, right? So I fully agree, but it's about the goal, the end game, the how, sorry, the why, not necessarily the work. Same as it's also, like, space in itself should never be a goal. Having a new space in itself should never be a goal. That's also something my colleagues stressed. Space is an enabler. Space is a means to an end, but if the end is not clear, then of course the space will not deliver the value, and also the work processes will not deliver the value that you need to move forward. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You would like to comment?
Yeah, if I can come in with something, also disrupt the whole thing. Once we started as disruptive, I think it's like with everything else, and I hope everyone can see me, well actually not, but anyway you can hear me. One size does not fit all. There will be always people who will enjoy working from home, and there will be always people who will enjoy working at the office. And I think the key here is to understand your workforce and distinguish between those two and providing opportunities for both parties. The problem that I see in many organizations that it's either or. They push everyone, now go home office, yes, and we're done. No, there will be people who wants to come to the office. And I think that's really the key to really understand, and this is, from every other motivational aspect, very important. from organizational perspective, and this is actually what you can do if you really assess your organization, understand the needs of the individuals. I think that is a very important key. It's always easy to learn about average, but average is very, very disturbing sometimes because there will be individual differences. Sorry to come in with this.
Christoph, how do you see the Romanian market? Because maybe you have some insights about that.
Yes, well, this topic about people working from home or at the office is quite a hot topic right now. We've got quite a stressful time on human resources in Romania, and we're trying to find the resources where they are sometimes and give them the choice to stay where they are, because it's for them a long journey to come to the office. And the transport also is quite long to do with the traffic. So with the companies we're working with, we're really studying this possibility to have a part of their team sometimes to work from home maybe 1 day, 2 days, and the rest of the time come to the office. And this also has an economical impact, because then they need less space overall. They will have maybe 80% of the space they had before by allowing a space that can take like 60, 70% of the employees full time. And then the remaining spaces will be spaces to interact, to communicate, to feel also at home, because they will create areas where there are, like the work cafe we were talking about, or quite nice meeting rooms where they will have also, of course, the technology, but also the means to collaborate, to interact, to brainstorm together. So it's really a hot topic now also in Romania, because of this human resource stress, because of these difficulties to reach the office sometimes. So we're doing a lot this exercise of studying with the board of the companies, with also the employees, spending time with them, understanding how they work, how much time they actually need to spend in the office, and therefore find the right solution for each company. It's true, each company is different, and you have to find the customized solution.
Alina, you would like to comment something, and I would
like
to ask you something.
From the HR perspective, to say like this, that is exposed to this kind of requests. I am working in banking. We know that usually banking is much more, so the flexibility, it's not the same as in, I don't know, tech companies, for example. But this came on our table as HR and as a company last year, and we started this kind of remote work program. And what I can add beside what Christoph said was that, for example, some people, as he said, are willing to take this opportunity. Some of them are not, and are feeling much more comfortable to come to the office. The ones that, so we opened the remote work to an eligible population, and the usage rate was of 50% of the eligible population that we consider that could remote work. This says, in the same time, that indeed people want to come to the office due to different reasons. Maybe I am very close to the office and I want to be there because I have 2 kids and I cannot work at home. Maybe because I value much more the interaction with my colleagues. Maybe because there are different meetings on which you have to take part. But I think that it's a trend also to increase the number of days, and I fully agree with the perspective that this, from the corporate perspective, can bring a lot of efficiencies on the space. And I know that the trend externally is this one, smart office, also to consider that, I don't know, you have 2 days per week, all the population must be remote, and you efficientize the space that you have in the company. So, yes.
That's a very interesting comment, and I think it links back to Joel's comment that in fact it's related to what people value and their motives. But question for all of you, and maybe for you, Alina or Joel, or whoever want to comment, how do you keep the fairness? Because if you implement this kind of policy, could that lead to, people saying, okay, but why should I come? Or how do you keep this, especially if you are managing a company having different types of businesses, like, I don't know, manufacturing, sales, you cannot implement these kind of things in all the areas. Any thoughts on how you can do this? I know in the room there are companies that are having a very big complexity. They have manufacturing, so people who have to come at work. They have commercial side, people who are more independent, let's say. So how can you implement such a policy to keep fairness?
In my opinion, you cannot keep the full fairness towards everybody. And we face this because, for example, in the branches, people, the ones that have exposure to the client directly, like in the tellers, cashier, and so on, cannot have remote work. You cannot have, look, I'm in front of your desk, I need you to process this OP for me. But I don't think that this should stop any company from implementing such a program. You can find different types of other benefits for the other colleagues. And what I can say is that those that are going into remote work are much more they bring much more value to what they are delivering. Colleagues in my team, for example, say, I was so productive today being able to focus on the topics that I had to solve, because usually in the office somebody comes, asks a question, you have to solve another urgency that appears and so on. So I think that from my perspective, but I will be more than glad to hear how the other industries are facing this, you cannot allocate the same rights towards the entire organization.
If I can just add from a space perspective, I think building on also what Jolt you said and Alina, what you just said, if space is to be a factor, space design is a very utilitarian process, right? You will never make everyone happy. It's about meeting the needs of the most users that you have. And I think a concept that is quite relevant here is what we call choice and control. So 3 years ago, roughly, we wanted to research. So the word engagement was really booming. Now the new word is agile. It used to be productivity. 3 years ago, it was engagement. So we're like, okay, let's take that one and see how it's related to what we're doing, which is the workplace. So we measured workplace satisfaction, and we contrasted that with measures of engagement. And the question that led to the highest correlation, that put you in the high engagement, high workplace satisfaction quadrant, was, can you work where you want based on the task that you are doing? So whether the nature of your work enables you to work remotely, even though my personal belief, and there's quite a lot of research saying that you still need physical space even though you don't have to go there every day, whether that choice and control is enabled is one thing, but you also need choice and control within the space that you are working from every day. And one final point, and then I promise I'll give you the floor. This remote working trend has really led to what I believe and what we believe is an artificial split between alone and together work. Because life is messy, right? Life is more complicated than that. If you artificially say, now I'm working alone, then I'm working together, you risk to reinvent the wheel many times, right? Because you cannot go back and forth. So space should really help you to, I need to hide, I need high concentration, low stimulation, or I need to be visible to others without having to run away from the office. But curious to know what you guys think.
Yeah, just 2 sentences, because I think we exploited the topic already. I think this is a white collar privilege. Obviously, you cannot take the machine home with the blue colors, obviously. But I think still, what I see, there's still some transparency and communication needed, even with the white collar population, because I hear sometimes that people are looking for each other in the office. Where are you? Oh, I'm at home office. You are not at the meeting. So I think still there are loads of coordination work needs to be done. That's a different perspective, but that's something which I think every organization needs to learn, how we are going back and forth between the two options.
Actually, I will add not 2 sentences, just 2 words. Efficiency and balance. I think these words should drive everything, because you might be more efficient working home for 1 day or 2 days, and more efficient team office all together, 2 days or 3 days. And again, the other word, balance. So I mean, the balance drives you toward efficiency, because also digitalization, it's a purpose, it's a goal, yeah, to work more efficient with higher productivity, and that's all.
Talking about these buzzwords, digitalization and generations and millennials and so on, there are many types of leadership, yeah, tele-leadership, holacracy. So some people are saying that, okay, it's different to lead virtual teams, and other people are saying that, okay, teams should strive to self-manage themselves and so on. So What do you think in a working space where we have a lot of generations, so millennials are coming, maybe they want different things, what kind of leadership is required? And what are the competencies? We have different perspectives here. We have Joel that is seeing a lot of organization globally and deal with this kind of thing, a CEO. We have the rector of ASEBU's the MBA that is teaching these modern leaders, HR, and you that are seeing also many cultures. What is your opinion on this? So what are the key ingredients of leadership that still works for millennials? Or do you need at all leadership?
Well, I think from Hogan perspective, Dr. Hogan already elaborated very heavily on this topic that there is no XYZ leadership, there is leadership. And let me bring you one example to justify or underline this. Actually, I would like to take the example of two companies. One of the companies which has been in the longest existing company in the whole history of the world. It was a company in Japan, a temple builder company, which started to operate in 574 and ended up operation at 2006. So almost 1,500 years they were in existence. That's one company. The other company is more well known for all of you, it's Microsoft, who almost went down after they lost Ballmer and of course Steve Jobs was not in place, and they put forward one CTO, Satya Nadella, who was with the company but was not as a top leader, and they appointed him to be the CEO. And guess what? The commonality and the similarity between the two cases, that what drove the employees for that company, Congo Gumi, for 100, 500 years is exactly the same thing, but the employees are talking about Satya Nadella, who, by the way, turned around the entire company and made Microsoft fantastic again. They talk about the same things, and guess what? They talk about integrity, they talk about competence, they talk about judgment and vision. Leadership is leadership, has been always been, and is always will be. The tools what we use, we shall not mistaken. Digitalization is a way of working and tools to be used, and new ways used. But the basic principles of leadership seems to be the same.
Okay. Video?
I would want to add something regarding the fact that I think nowadays it's much more difficult to be a leader than years ago, because you need to have an openness to technology. So of course we are defending the basic sciences. By the way, the competence it's in the top of requirements always. But you need to be so open to technology, because otherwise you are lost. Companies which are not getting digitalization will fail in 5 years, 10 years, 30 years. So nowadays it would be to be very friends with the IT department, and IT department needs to learn management in order to make really a team and to be open to the changes. So you need to use technology and use in the same time emotions and communication with internally and also externally with your clients, with your suppliers, with everybody. So that's why I think nowadays it is much more difficult to be a leader. So that's it.
Much more complex. Christoph, you are a CEO. You're running a business of several million. So how is it for you? Does it change the requirements?
Well, having been a CEO for 22 years, being also from the generation X, I think.
I think you're
born
kidding
in 68.
yourself.
X. I'm not a baby boomer, but I'm just after.
Aren't you?
No, so I'm X, and I was not born with the technology that the leaders from the millennials are. And okay, we are not different. I don't think we are different is the word. The leaders of who are born before than the millennials, but we need to act faster. We have so much data available. We have so much information. So we are expected to take decisions quicker. We are supposed to be more knowledgeable, but at the end we remain the same. We have to be solving problems. We have to be good networkers. We have to be agile. because indeed, yes, we're facing different generations at work. So agile thinking is quite a requirement from leaders today. From whatever generation you are from, agile thinking is a key element. And I would add, I've seen this trend very much lately in Romania. It's the CSR. You need to be very to have a sensitivity to CSR. This is something that the millennials are very sensitive, employees or leaders, and this is what every company is right now addressing, is what CSR program they can have, because that motivates, engage their employees, and the leader has to address that.
Thank you.
Yes.
Alina?
What I would add is that, you have to adapt for sure as a leader. And when I say a leader, I don't always mean the by position, to say like this. I think that each of us, no matter the position that we have in the organization, being even just a contributor, we are leaders somehow. Leading our work, leading the success of what we are delivering. If I think especially on the concepts of leadership, I like very much a concept called servant leadership. I don't know if you read about it. It was first brought on the table in the 70s by Robert Greenleaf, and it said somehow that the leader should act as a it's not sounding nice if you translate it in Romanian, but should act like a servant. Why? Because he should put first his support towards the team members and other colleagues in the organization, help them understand which is the common purpose that they have, and deliver together the results that are expected. So I think that somehow this is also expected by the millennials generations, because as my colleague said, they shifted somehow the expectations to the organization. The millennials are not sitting from 9 to 5 or to 6 in the organization just working and like we did 10 years ago. So they shifted and they are much more focused on this diverse project outside the organization. So you have somehow to change the approach you have as a leader in an organization.
Can I add something, because I forgot, and after Dr. Hogan's presentation, we talked a lot about humbleness, and I think the millennial leaders will be much more into being humble and accepting feedbacks, which the older generations had a harder time to do, I think. It's still a bit of time for Romania, unfortunately, if I can say. I'm sorry, I'm French, maybe arrogant, but I'm not Napoleon. But I can see the trend really of the leaders being really more humble, accepting feedbacks, criticism, constructive criticism.
Okay, thank you.
So if I start on the generational differences and whether they have implications, I think for sure there are some differences. I'll focus maybe on just two of them. So Gen Y, which is my generation, research says that we will only work for a company if we can resonate with the values. Then the generation after me, which is Gen Z, right? Research says that they are only going to work for a company if they see the company as authentic. So I think this can be really translated to how leadership is perceived by these two generations. So if with you as a human, as my leader, if we don't have the same values, and if you are not authentic, then most likely whatever actual leadership style that you have is going to be less relevant. So I think the values and authenticity is a very big thing. And the second thing is I hear this a lot from baby boomers and Gen X that are trying to recruit people, like, your generation, it's so annoying. You want so much, then you leave after 6 months, and it's impossible. You always want something else. Yes, that's definitely a difference, but that's also an opportunity. So if a company is able and willing to promote shadowing, promote cross-functional and transversal learning and movement, then that's really an advantage. Because you can keep us for 15 years if you just allow us to do something different every 2 to 3 years. Which, again, might seem daunting to some companies, but I see it as an opportunity. And lastly, of course, everything that your research says I completely resonate with that, and I think all of us in the room, when you were going through the charismatic checklist, probably at least 10 people screenshot it and send it to a colleague. We're like, oh, does this resonate with you? Do you remember this guy? Do you remember this person? So I think we can all resonate with it. The only thing that I would, the only concept or perspective that I could add to that is the concept of empathy. So it's perceived as such a soft thing, and I'd be curious if the same research that was conducted where the charisma skill and the humility skill, if people are actually looking for empathy as a skill. So it seems like a very banal thing, right? But the ability to put yourself in somebody else's shoes involves active listening, involves not jumping to conclusions and to solutions, which guess what? We're predetermined as humans to do. So it's counterintuitive for us not to jump to a solution always, which is why design thinking, for example, is a very big thing. So empathy is, I think, is really key in everything that we do because it's correlated with your ability to be humble, it's correlated to your ability to your likelihood to be to have integrity and everything else. And the good news is that research says you can train it. So it's not like, oh, unless of course you're more on the sociopathic side, but if you're not, then it's something that you can train.
So thank you. So all in all, actually, we go back to the idea that leadership, in fact, it's a resource for the group and should not be seen as a privilege. Joel,
Yes.
please.
Yes, and I think digitalization, the effect of digitalization is overrated. I think it does not really change leadership, it's just changed the attention of leadership. It's not changing and disrupting leadership, it's changing the attention of leadership. Technology change has been always around since the beginning of humankind. Ask the horse carriage drivers in New York when taxis changed the scene of New York, same story. Anytime, and there is always new technology to be used. Digitalization, just a new way of technology to be used again, but the basics of leadership does not seem to change.
Because we are approaching lunch and I already see some movement in the room, I would like to ask each of you the same question. If you have any final powerful message or remark for HR professionals and or managers from your perspective, what would it be? Could be invest in, be careful too. Who would like to start? So key message for HR professionals or for managers. Christoph, you would like to start or no? Ilinka, okay.
I can start. So I've only been a leader officially for 8 months, 9 months, something like that. Past doesn't matter, but yeah, this is my official kind of job title that goes with the leadership part. So the one thing that I really learned and I struggled with at the beginning because I went into it thinking the complete opposite is that as a leader, you have to provide certainty. And actually, all you have to provide is clarity. Maybe it sounds very obvious, but especially with our cultural background, I'm Romanian as well, right? So when you were giving the talk at the beginning, because I've lived in multiple countries, I was thinking to myself, I'm probably not going to score the way you were mentioning that I'm going to score. At 100% on bold and 100% on diligent. So yeah, we are who we are. So I went into this role thinking I need to have full certainty. Doesn't exist. You just need to provide clarity. So that's just the learning I wanted to share, but in terms of advice to HR, and this will be purely on my own personal experience. One thing Karin already touched upon, so we're starting to use data more and more in recruitment, but we as humans will always think we're right. So if I have a person I'm interviewing and I really like them, they seem really cool, I love talking to them, on paper they're perfect, and then their test results come back and it's like, no. I think a lot of us have been in the situation where we're fighting with HR, like, no, it's probably the data, show me the benchmark, I'm sure it's not. As HR professionals, please help us help ourselves. Please do not let us do that anymore because indeed, as it turns out, data really needs to be trusted in this case. The second thing is there's a lot of focus on onboarding and on learning and development, but I really don't see any focus on offboarding. And I don't mean just the exit interview and why did you leave and what can we learn from that, but I mean the impact that a person in your team leaving, your leader leaving, that it has on you. on personally, emotionally, but also in terms of the knowledge transfer. And last but not least, if you don't punish bad management, over time, the belief that people will have is that you're rewarding it. And inversely, that you not engaging in those bad behaviors is not being rewarded. So again, might sound very, very obvious, but it has such an impact on the team morale and on how people will act in the future.
So believe the data, be prepared to take unpopular decisions.
Yeah.
That would be, and be careful to the people who leave.
Yeah.
Who would like, so anything that you would like to share with the HR community, with the managers, any final thoughts, Joel?
Yes, I think the major point for today would be don't let your attention disrupted by stuff which doesn't have validity and scientific proof behind. Because you can get into the trap every day if you go to an airport and you pick up a management book which is wrote by someone because it looks fancy and there is no number, science, and ROI study behind, forget it. And not only because I'm saying it, because it's worth it. And that's my point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I'm not an HR person, so I'm not going to give advice on HR, except that, well, you know, to attract the best talents is to give them a meaningful role in your company, for sure. And then to engage them further, I guess the right packages has to be done. But in order to engage them further and to make them creative, don't forget that their environment where they will work in will be key to their creativity and sense of innovation. So really get involved in redesigning, in rebuilding the offices where you work in order to enhance creativity. Participate in it because your role is very important in it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ovidio?
As you know, I am a finance background, but the author Robert Higgins that wrote the book that I'm working with is saying that the best assets of the company are going tonight home at their spouses. So human resources are more important than financial resources because if you have it, then you get everything, including finance resources and everything. A message for HR is that you should be one of the right hands of the CEO. Do you have more right hands?
More right hands? Yeah. What do you mean?
Helpers.
more support from your top managers. Okay, so HR manager should be one of the right hand of the CEO. And but that means you can have power. My advice is don't use it. You shouldn't have power. You should be support. You should be support for CEO, and not just for CEO, but for all managers in the company. Just support. Please put you the last one on the list of advantages, company cars, all kinds of advantages. Put you the last one. You should be the most humbled person or manager in the company. This is my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ovidio.
What I would say from HR perspective is that no matter if we are in HR or leaders up in the organization, I think that we should think that we are working with people. And in the end, for each of us as an employee, when we go home, what counts is the respect that we feel in the office day by day, the integrity of the manager and of the team member, and the recognition of the contribution that we brought there. So I think that we should do what matters, meaning that we should help our colleagues in the organization to grow and develop and to respect them as individuals. So this is my message.